how to do it. But I am delighted to say, without further ado, it is time to welcome our very special guest on the line. Let's hope this works. Let's see what happens. Tom Martell. Tom, how are you, sir? Yeah, I've got no sound there, but I'm about to have. Don't worry, we can sort this in just a moment. It's not at Tom's end, it's at mine, and I'm going to deal with that because he was doing all sorts of things earlier on that you wouldn't want to have heard on the stream. And now you can, and there he is. Hi, Tom. So thanks very much.
Hey, Rich.
Thanks so much for being with us and our first guest here on Downtime. On the screen right now, you can see Tom's resume, which includes, congratulations, you're from the United States of America, a Platinum Pro, 7 Grand Prix Top 8s, 2 Pro Tour Top 8s, the champion, of course, of Pro Tour Gatecrash in 2013, double Grand Prix champion, Indianapolis in 2012, Sacramento in 2014, and over $130,000 in lifetime prize money. That's not bad for playing a little card game, is it, Tom?
No, I'll take it. I'll definitely take it. It's a nice little hobby.
Yeah, very good. I like that. A nice little hobby. So, you've been very kind enough to send us a few little pics from past times. So I'm going to take a little look at those with the viewers right now. And there you can see, I'm going to bring you into our window as well. So what the viewers are looking at, Tom, because I know you're a little bit behind, is New York City 2006, Dad, Tom and Colin. Then we've got Ken, Rob and Tom, Spring Formula 04 and Summer Associates Oric. So first of all, who's that in NYC 2006?
Sure, this is man, has it really been 8 or 9 years already? That was my roommate in my 3rd year of law school, who went to college with me, Ken. He's actually in the picture below as well.
Okay, right. And Dad, I think, is very self-explanatory. And what does Dad do? What's Dad's line of work?
My dad, he is a financial planner, so taxes and financial advice.
So then we have Tom and Colin. Who's Colin?
Colin was one of my best friends in college, so that was 2004, long time ago.
Now I'm gonna butcher this word. What is SIGEP? Sig Ep? SIGEP?
SIGEP.
Oh,
yeah,
is
so
this
SIGEP
like
stands
Sigma Epsilon or something?
Sigma Phi Epsilon was my fraternity
okay.
in college. And so that was our picture from our fraternity formal back in '04.
Huh, okay. And then Summer Associate, rocking the pink there. Very nice, very stylish. Who or what is Oric?
Oric's a law firm that I worked for when I was at my first summer out of law school. I summered there. So
there's a lot of law going on there. When did you decide that law was going to be the professional path?
I mean, I was always kind of interested in law. I would say I always found it to be engaging, and I watched TV shows as a kid, and you see the courtroom. It seems like this giant, really fun game. So that was really appealing to me. So I was always kind of leaning in the direction. I actually studied computer science at university, so I was taking that path. I found it to be really engaging and fun, but always planned on going to law school once I completed undergrad.
Okay, so where did you go to college?
I went to Stanford University in California.
Now, Stanford, by my limited non-American understanding, that's quite a good school. They let smart people in there.
It's up there, yeah. I definitely was one of the kids that spent a lot of time studying and working hard in high school, and it paid off nicely there. Getting to go to it was a great place. I had a blast there, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Are you a highly motivated person?
At times. I mean, I think you see that from most people who achieve a lot of success in Magic have some level of motivation going, at least for fits and spurts. So I would say definitely. When I was younger, academia motivated me a lot. That tapered off. I think, as you can see in some of these, none of these are particularly studious pictures of me in college. So I'd say once I kind of got there, maybe it declined. I started balancing things with the more important social aspects of life, which I think are at least equally important.
Sure. Growing up then, who's at home? Obviously we've got Dad there. Who else is around? Brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts?
So my mom as well, who did not, I actually don't have a digital picture of her. I'm probably one of the last sort of generations that doesn't have their whole life digitalized. Right. So I happen to have this one picture of my dad that was taken on with an iPhone or something, but nothing of my mom. But just my two parents. I'm an only child. I have a larger extended family, but they're all based on the East Coast, and I grew up in California.
Oh,
So
best
I'd see them,
way.
for holidays and whatnot, but not especially close to them.
Right. Only child. It's great, isn't it?
There are pluses and minuses.
There are
I think when you're
minuses?
absolutely, I think when you're younger, you don't maybe fully appreciate them, but having certainly a sibling you get along with is tremendous, right? You have a kind of a friend at home who's always around, and then as you get older, having someone you have that connection with, I think, has a lot of value.
Hmm.
Whereas being an only child, you kind of learn things easier. I think you learn how to share. It's important an important life lesson that as an only child you don't really take to heart. Perhaps I think you get socialized in good ways at a younger age.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's some of the social life. We're going to get into the magic life, and that means it must be time for Desert Island Deck. Alright Tom, here we go with your first Desert Island deck, and it comes from Pro Tour Chicago 2000 Blue-White Control. Now we haven't actually started with a deck list, we've got a millstone on the screen, and for those of you that don't know, millstone is a way you can kill your opponents by running them out of cards, because if you have to draw a card and you can't, you die. That's the end. So we understand what that millstone's doing, but then there is a fact or fiction on the screen with a great big red X across it. Now,
Yeah.
below
Yeah.
that, I have noted that on day 2 of that Pro Tour, there were 11 blue-white control decks. 11 in total. Blue-white control decks on day 2 that played 4 copies of Fact or Fiction, 10. And one of your favourite players, Tom Saito, only played 3 copies in his main deck. What is that X doing on there? What's the story, Tom?
Yeah, you'll notice that there are no blue-white control decks on day 2 that played 0 copies of Fact or Fiction. There was one deck that did that on day 1. So Pro Tour Chicago was my first premier level event. It was, I think, my maybe 8th tournament total. I had not been playing competitive Magic for very long, and so I won a PTQ in Masks Block Constructed,
Right.
and went to the Pro Tour. Texas deck actually was staying with Zvi Mauschwitz, Seth Byrne, Scott Johns, and Brian Selden, and they had this awesome Fires deck. I was like, no, I'm good. I got this deck I built at home with my friend. I think I'm set here. And it was blue-white control. Its win condition was Millstone. And it did not play any copies of Fact or Fiction because that card just mills you for 5 and let you get Millstoned out faster. So why would you want that to happen?
Yeah, that doesn't seem...
Instead,
Yeah, that seems weak.
yeah, instead it played Howling Mine as its card draw engine, which actually was fine in a lot of matchups, but it really kind of broke down when they could just disenchant your Howling Mine, as I learned in round 2. So I drew round 1. I played against Nethergo.
Oh, God.
I won game 1, and then he killed me on the last extra turn of game 2. And then I played against a blue-white control mirror against Tom Gevin. Tom was a very colorful character from Magic's past.
Right.
Some of you might be familiar with him. And he just, on turn 6, dismantling blowed with Kicker my Howling Mine. I didn't have a counterspell for it. And I was like, oh, so you draw 2 cards and I draw no cards. Oh, then you cast Fact or Fiction, and now you're up 30 cards. So that did not go very well for me.
Yeah, I can see how that might have been a little suboptimal, we might say. All right, so that's deck number 1 that you did play. Let's see if we can find a happier deck for you to play. And this time, I've put up Alan Comer, Miracle Grow, GP Houston 2002. So 4 tropical islands, 6 island. If you're wondering where all the rest of the land have gone, no. That's it. There's 10 land in this deck. Then you got 4 Caribbean Dryad, 4 Werebear, 3 Guys Skyfolk, 2 Waterfront Bouncer, and 4 Merfolk Looter. And then all these spells that cost next to nothing. Winter Roar, Land Grant, Curiosity, Gush, Daze, Force of Will, Sleight of Hand, Brainstorm, and Foil. Tom, what's going on with this deck? What's it trying to do?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a pretty classic aggro control shell. So I think it sort of predates concepts like fairies. Which certainly plays on the same axis of just trying to kill your opponent pretty quickly with some pressure creatures, while also denying them the ability to interact and play spells with cheap counter spells like Daze and Force of Will, as well as cards like Winter Orb, which just kind of shut off their ability to do anything.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you interact with this? You played this deck when at GP Houston?
So I played this deck at GP Houston. It was my first kind of success at anything beyond the PTQ level. I actually punted playing for top 8 in the second to last round against Ken Kroner, where I just played I had 2 lands in my hand. It was perfect, but I played Tropical Island on turn 1 instead of Island, and he wastelanded it. And I had a Gush in my hand along with a Werebear, and then unfortunately he just I only didn't draw another land the whole game, so I ended up dying. And his hand was atrocious. He killed me like 13 turns later with 1 creature. So had I just played Island on turn 1 and then Tropical Island on turn 2 and Gushed in response, I probably would have made top 8 of that GP. But it was my first success at any real like kind of significant level.
That's a harsh lesson, I guess. And is that something that
it was?
Is that something that sticks with you? I mean, do you actually bring that up in your own mind when you're in sort of pressure situations, or is that more just a kind of fundamental now of just part of the background of who you are as a player?
I mean, I think it's something I learned a lot from that experience, and I mean, at the time, I think it definitely stung, and took me a little while to shake off. And actually, I think it was definitely a kind of a learning experience for me.
All right, let's move on. Go on.
No, I think it's just you take that, you learn from it, and then you move on. For me, it was the first time I was playing in kind of a high pressure situation, and so it was just sort of getting used to that. Just trying to. I was at the PT. At the PT, I didn't win a match. I got the bye in the last round.
Right.
So this was 2 years later is my kind of first return back and so it was just okay. Let's just internalize this and go from here.
Well, I'm quite consoled by the 0-5-1 at the start, because it's like you left yourself room to grow. That's what we're saying. All right, let's move on to deck number 3, and here we go. So we've got Core Blade from Pro Tour Paris 2011. 8 creatures, lots of different bits and pieces in this deck. You've got 8 creatures, Squadron Hawks and Stoneforge Mystics. You've got a couple of equipment, a Sword of Feast and Famine and a Silver Lifestaff. Suite of Planeswalkers, 3 Gideon, 4 Jace, and then, as far apart as they could sensibly be as sorceries go, 4 Preordain and 4 Day of Judgment. Those 2 are not the same. And then Instants are Deprive, 3 Mana Leak, 4 Spell Pierce, and 1 Stoic Rebuttal. That was some weird counterspell, wasn't it, Stoic Rebuttal?
Yeah, it really was. I actually forgot we played a copy of that card in the deck.
Okay, so the story here is, in some ways, the deck, but perhaps more importantly, the group of people that you were with and what that did for you, because you ended up in the top 8 of this event, finishing 6th in the end. Talk us through how you ended up where you did and what the experience was like of testing with the team that eventually came up with this Core Blade deck.
Sure. So I was sort of informally part of Channel Fireball for this and a couple other tournaments around the time of this one. I'd been friends with actually Louis Scott Vargas and I went to high school together. And kind of fun facts from the past. Right. So we've known each other for a long time, and so I got to kind of tag along with him to some tournaments, and this was one of those. And I actually wasn't sure I was going to play up until the night before the tournament. I was debating between playing this and then playing this affinity deck that played a bunch of Vector Asps that Sam Black had designed.
Right.
I think Sam was the designer on that deck, and going back and forth. But the process was just kind of seeing how kind of great Magic players can come together and just sort of break a format and how they think about the game, and being part of the kind of the conversations and sessions around that, talking through the last sideboard cards and main deck cards in this deck. But really for me, it was getting the benefit from that without having to maybe put in all the time and deciding, hey, this is really worth putting the time into. Let's find a way to do that, and trying to become kind of a more of a core part of a squad, because I started to see the value in that from this experience.
How exciting was it as you started to see top 8 come into view? Because if memory serves, what it felt like to me was that you often see there's always a sort of snapshot of a Pro Tour round about round 13, round 12, round 13, and you look at the top 32 names and you go, look at this is incredibly stacked, it's a wonderful collection of talent. And then round 13, half of them die, and 8 people you've never heard of carry on. And in round 14, half of them die, and 6 of the 8 people you've never heard of before carry on. And by the time you get to the top 8, only 2 of the people that you were thinking, look at this collection of talent, have actually made it in. And of course, what you're left with are terrific players like Yuki Ichikawa, for example, who are going to go on and be amazing. But that sort of whittling away, it felt like you were all in there with 3 rounds to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that tournament specifically, I mean, at that time I'd probably be in the camp of people who don't really know who I am. But you look at, like, in the last round, LSB was playing against Paul Rietzel for top 8. With 1 round to go, before that I played against Ifro. There were a ton of other names, and we were kind of paired against each other, but someone was going to be surviving. I played against like Chapin in the last round. We got to draw in, but yeah, it was pretty exciting. Obviously for me, my first time going deep into Pro Tour. I top 32 maybe 2 Pro Tours, 3 Pro Tours prior to that to get back on the Pro Tour in San Juan. But there I was out of contention all of day 2 and just trying to like grind out the top 32, and I won out to make it. And so it's a very different feeling when it's yours to lose, and there's a lot of pressure on the line there. And so it was certainly an incredible experience for me. I like to think maybe that Houston experience 10 years earlier helped a little bit with just having been there before in contention. Also, I have a long kind of competitive chess background, so I've gone late in chess tournaments, and I kind of know how to deal with that stress. But it was a combination of kind of terror that you're going to mess up or lose, and excitement that you're going to make it.
So before we leave Core Blade and Pro Tour Paris 2011, and thanks for your suggestions in the chat that we should put formats on these. We'll certainly do that from next week. Really appreciate the feedback. And also, hopefully we've adjusted the audio delay on me so that you can see me do it. Yeah, so hopefully that's a bit better. But before we leave Paris, Tom, I have to ask you. Yes, you made the top 8. That's all fantastic. But are you not just abysmally ashamed of yourself that you didn't make day 2 of the Grand Prix as well, like Paul Rietzel?
So I'm not ashamed because so for people that don't remember, that was they tried out inserting a GP in the middle of the PT. I started feeling pretty bad at the end of Friday, which was day 2. I woke up on Saturday with 103-degree fever. I had pneumonia. So nice. I didn't get out of bed or play a single game of Magic from the time that I made the top 8 to the time that my match started, and I was so I was not really in any kind of shape to play in the GP as well. So I give myself a slight excuse or a slight pass for that, given that I was practically dying.
Fair enough. We'll let you off. At that point, though, we'll see what happens when you don't have pneumonia, which is when we go to 2013 Pro Tour Gate Crash. The deck list is up, and I always love looking at deck lists because you get a sense of what's going on just because they look so different on the page. And here we are with like tons of lands over there, and we've got just these 2 Lingering Souls, and then the 4 Rods of Charm. And then it's just, look at all these creatures. You just got 4, 8, 12, 14, 17, 19, 23, 27, 20. That's 30 creatures plus the Lingering Souls, so that's another 58 creatures. That's approximate. What were you thinking turning up with all those creatures?
I mean, sometimes you just want to attack with some guys, right? I mean, it's this is obviously an interesting deck. It's a kind of a classic Sam Black build in that it's a bunch of little pieces that come together and do something greater than the sum of their parts, and it does so pretty well. Cards like Skurzak High Priest, it's cards like Falconath Aristocrat, just like very powerful cards individually, Boros Reckoner, that can come together nicely. And then you do have a lot more spells in your sideboard, obviously, so you can bring in the impactful spells in any given matchup. But having your default game plan is I'm just going to put some guys in play that are hard to interact with, and I'm going to try to kill you with them.
Yeah, you do understand when you say you've got lots of extra spells in the sideboard. You do know Lingering Souls isn't really a spell.
Fair. Yeah, I more than most people understand the ins and outs of that card.
Right. So I was going to ask you specifically about that card. What is it about that card? Because I think it's a card that is absolutely associated with you personally, which is quite an achievement when you think of all the Magic players in the world. What is it that drew you to it? Did you understand as soon as you saw it that this was going to be a lifelong love affair?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you look at again the deck we just looked at, Cobblade, where you played with Squadron Hawk and understanding the power that card had in the deck, it's pretty obvious that if Squadron Hawk is a powerful card in some contexts, that Lingering Souls is going to be much more powerful in very similar contexts, therefore have a broader application. Probably my two honorable mention decks that aren't listed here are going to be Spirit Delver from Pro Tour Honolulu, which played four Lingering Souls, and the deck that I won GP Indianapolis with, which played Lingering Souls as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So, I've had a lot of success with that card and decks built around it, but I think it's that style of deck. Lingering Souls is a card that plays really well on offense and defense. It lets you take on multiple game plans. It just gives you kind of more decision points. And as they've moved Magic towards this kind of Planeswalker model, it's a great card in that context. It's so good at fighting Planeswalkers, with the exception of Jace, Architect of Thought, which will give that guy a pass. But it's so good at fighting his bigger brother Jace, the Mind Sculptor as an example. So it's just finding, it plays into my style. It's the kind of decks that I enjoy playing, and I've had some success with them.
All right, so those are 4 decks that Tom did play at some point in his career. When we come back, we'll have a look at 4 decks that you didn't play, and we'll find out why you picked them. But thanks to Tom very much for now. Right now, it's game time once again. So what I need you to do is get pen and paper ready, because we are going to go to a round that I've rather laughingly called General